Now that the weed business is big business, it has the same questions that a normal business would. Today we're going to talk about the ways you can use a 401k to finance or save tax money in your marijuana-related business. All right, let's do this. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Finance Agents Live. This is episode number 90. We're creeping up on 100. Today, this is Tim MC. I'm joined by Ben Morris, the fabulous Ben Morris. Thank you for coming back.
I'm back again.
He was here 2 weeks ago talking about using a 401k for real estate purchases. Super interesting. Today, we're going to be talking about 401ks in the cannabis. Oh, hey, I forgot my clicker. Hold on. This is how you know this is live, because we mess something up almost every single show. Let me see if this thing works. Perfect. All right. So today we're going to be talking about 401k. Now that the weed business is big business, as I said, things are changing, and these companies are now dealing with real issues that regular businesses are, because they're now regular businesses, right? So we're going to be talking about that. Before I get too far into it, join us next week, where we're going to be talking about, yikes, I'm so busy, how to keep up and keep sane. If you are a finance agent or loan officer, then invariably you've gone through a cycle where you have so much business, you just can't keep up with it. I'm going to be joined by Trey Sublette, one of the busiest guys I know, who's going to talk to us about how he prioritizes his day in order to make sure to get done what needs to be done and, how to prioritize stuff. Ben, you're pretty dang busy, right?
Yeah.
This is something you know about.
I'm not great at it.
It's freaking hard. And it's super hard. Right now, I'm at one of those moments. This is why I set that one, because I am so busy I can't get back to people, and people start to get angry. You might say that, hey, having too much business is a great problem to have, but no, a problem is a problem, and I have that.
I do
right
have
now.
one hot tip.
Oh, hot tip? Sweet, sneak peek.
Get a scheduling app and put the link in your email signature so
Okay.
that people don't have to call you and say, when are you available? They just click a link and schedule a time to talk to you. I use it all the time, and everybody that schedules a call says, this is the greatest thing.
Awesome.
So,
cool.
do that.
Okay.
I do the exact same thing. What are you using?
Calendly.
Yeah.
Calendly is the best.
Hey, all right. We got
It's
people
great.
excited
There's
about
two
Calendly.
endorsements for Calendly.
Free. And that version, you can attach it to your Google Calendar for free.
All right.
It's all good.
Free
You
99.
only get one type of meeting, right?
Yeah. Okay. So that's next week. We're going to be talking about what to do when you're super busy, which invariably you will be in, because you only get paid really when something actually funds. If you start chasing too many rabbits, they all get away, right? So the week after that, we're going to have Andy Wong, one of the new loan officers here. He's going to be on the show talking about selling the masterclass. He's been selling a real estate masterclass a lot. He'll be talking about what that's been like, what people like, the responses he's getting afterwards. So we'll be hearing about that. If you like those shows, then subscribe, dang it, to the show, and you get notifications. So I'll email you, and maybe Ben will come back, and you'll know that Ben is going to be here. All right, so with that said, let's jump into it. We're going to be discussing three main things: the types of cannabis or marijuana businesses that you can use 401k in. They tend to fall into a couple different categories. So Ben is going to be telling us about that. And then we're going to be talking about the different uses of 401k. So 401k for financing versus 401k for tax savings, the original traditional uses of 401k. You can now do both. All right, so with that, let's jump into talking about the types of cannabis businesses. Ben, take it away. What do you got?
Well, with cannabis especially, it's very important to understand what type of business you're dealing with, because it has to deal with the current state of cannabis, and it's still Schedule 1. And
Schedule 1 is the legal designation
legal.
for legal or illegal. It's federally illegal. Schedule 1 is
legal.
Yeah, it's up there with like crack, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Federally, it is crack.
Yeah.
So.
But that's important because of what they designate as a cannabis business is anything that touches the leaf. So growers, distributors, and retailers. That's what we call supply chain. And they have a specific set of problems, and they also have a different mindset, and they have different needs.
Okay,
and then
supply chain, they're actually in touching the weed. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Do they touch the weed?
Yeah.
That's really the
That's
separation.
that's what we're talking
That's
about.
supply chain.
And then the second type of business that we deal with is ancillary businesses. So what I've learned, over years of supporting cannabis businesses is that there are a lot of ancillary businesses that don't have any of the same qualifications. They're not, part of that supply chain, and so they can operate as just a normal business, but they do have a hand in supporting either cannabis businesses or providing services to cannabis users. And those businesses have, again, their own set of unique problems, their own needs, and that's kind of what we want to talk about in these next couple slides.
So they have problems. So if you're a business supporting cannabis businesses, you're considered a cannabis business. So if you're running a daycare at the grow farm, you'd be a business.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That'd be a business that has nothing to do with cannabis, but you're related because you're right there.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And we'll talk about specific examples. Ben's going to give us, I believe, 8 or
Something
9,
like that.
8 different examples of people that he's helped that fall into one of these 2 buckets. So, and by the way, if you're listening to this, if you have an example, you want to say, hey, does this work for this kind of business? What category would they fall into? What's the distinction between the 2? Well, actually, feel free to put your comments and questions below. We will see them and respond. Before we get into the actual examples, what are the primary differences between supply chain and ancillary business? Supply chain, obviously, they touch the weed. Ancillary, they touch people that touch the weed. What are the implications? What's the impact on what we're going to be doing in general categories?
So the biggest thing is what we're going to be talking about later, which is 401k for financing versus 401k for tax savings. Most supply chain businesses don't actually need a lot of financing because anyone getting involved in cannabis supply chain usually has a lot of cash. There are some operations that were already operating previously, and now they're looking to go straight. So they generally don't have as much of a need for financing. Also,
what you're saying is that there's a lot of money in the weed business, and the people coming into it are rolling in it.
Yeah, and a lot of people that are investing in these businesses, there's a lot of investors to be found. A lot of private equity if you're doing supply chain because it's known to be very profitable. Their unique problems are, having to find a way to funnel their finances. They can't open checking accounts. They can't have things like 401k
They still
plans.
can't open a checking account as
Well,
a
it depends on the
business?
state and the bank. Banks are federally regulated by FINRA and FDIC, and so a lot of times the difference is, well, if I accept this checking account, I open up a checking account for a cannabis business, I'll probably lose my FDIC insurance. And so for most banks, that's a huge problem. There are banks that don't deal in FDIC insurance, and they aren't federally regulated. The best example is for our first client, and
so right now you have to use a state charter bank if you're a marijuana business. So if you have a grow shop, so if I go down the street to a grow shop, they don't have a bank account, or if they do, it's a state bank. Correct. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Another problem that they have is that cannabis businesses are generally local. They can only operate in their state. That's still heavily regulated and should be. That if you're growing, distributing, retailing in Washington, you can't have any operations in California. And even franchises, there are franchise cannabis distributors and retailers. They really only franchise out into other locations in their state. Operating locally, not having as much finance problems, and having a lot of problems when it comes to their finances moving through the business into things like 401ks and checking accounts. That's their primary issues and benefits. For ancillary businesses, they generally do need a lot of funding because, again, they're just regular businesses and private equity is not as interested in them. They're usually self-starters, they're lifestyle businesses, so it's usually 1 or 2 guys just funding the business themselves and then providing a service to the cannabis industry. They don't have the limitations on checking accounts or federal regulation. They're totally fine in that regard, and they can operate nationally. So they can offer services in California, Washington, Oregon, as well as Colorado, and even in states where it's only medicinally legal.
So if you are making equipment that you're selling to hemp businesses or marijuana businesses, is there any negative impact? I mean, you could just operate like a regular business, right? What kind of limitations do they run into?
The only limitation they would run into is the perception or the issues that they run into with the attitude towards cannabis. So if you're marketing yourself, let's say as a marketing company that helps cannabis businesses, you might be closing the doors on other companies as well.
Okay.
But because cannabis is so new, the benefits of marketing directly to cannabis are, kind of outweigh existing businesses, because there are already companies that are providing ancillary businesses or business-to-business support for other industries. This is a new industry; it's not saturated, and so that's why there's a huge benefit in saying, "Well, I support cannabis businesses only," or I'm one of the first companies to do that, just like us.
Okay, great. All right. Cool. Well, let's get into some specific examples so we can really go through it. Let's talk about example number 1, cannabis extraction in Portland. First of all, what is extraction? Are they making edibles or something? Or
Exactly.
what is that?
So there's really 2 types of grow and distribution operations. There's one that deals with getting flower directly from the farm all the way to the consumer in its state. Then there's other companies that deal in, well, how can I put this in another form to help users, and that's primarily what extraction is how do they take that plant and distill it down into something that can be put into oils, and they'll be able to separate different qualities and properties of the flower. So
Basically, how do they remove the different components and separate them out? It's in distillation.
Yep, same
Distillation.
thing. So.
Cool. All
But
right.
there's, as the industry grows and becomes bigger, there's a lot more technology being involved every single day, and so they're getting better and better at extracting only the things that they want out of this cannabis flower, especially when it comes to things like CBD, where they have a property in pain relief that they want to take out of the flower, but they don't want any of the psychoactive effects. They don't want THC or anything like that. So that's the main reason why extraction has boomed and progressed in such an aggressive manner, is because there is a significant demographic of people that want certain benefits of cannabis, but not all of them.
It's interesting to think, because it's state by state regulated, it actually makes it harder for a big company to come in and own the market in a particular space, like an extraction company. If it was legal nationwide, you'd probably have a couple really big extraction companies that would suck up all the business. But because it's state by state, you're going to have an extraction company in every state, because you can't take it across the border, right? So
yeah, it's really,
if you know how to do this stuff, there might be an opportunity wherever you're at to start a business.
It's really good for antitrust. When you look at something like alcohol, beer specifically, you have craft breweries, they set up shop, they have, they're doing 2 or 3 barrels, and then all of a sudden a big brewery or a national brewery will come in and just pick them up and just say, well, you keep all your brand, but we're going to sieve off your profits. So that doesn't happen with cannabis. You're the only operation.
Okay, so this cannabis extraction company, did they exist? Were they extracting before it became legal?
No.
Okay, brand new.
Yeah, this is a financial advisor, had lots of money in his retirement account, and he just wanted to get into cannabis.
And he knew how to do extraction.
No, he didn't.
No.
He hired a team.
Came in Breaking Bad style, and he got a...
So he provided the financing, and he had a great mind, an MBA. He knew how to run a business, but he didn't know anything about cannabis.
Okay.
So he got involved. One of the best things I like about this example is he was one of 10 people to obtain a checking account in Oregon.
So he did get a checking account.
Yeah, so there was one bank that was opening accounts, and they only had, they would only allow for 10. They had to fit specific criteria. He turned around and sold his business after a year, and as he was going through the assets, the checking account itself was worth $100,000. Just the fact that he had that checking account, regardless of the balance in it.
Sweet. So. I need to go get a checking account. All right, cool. So that is example number 1. Example number 2, we have CBD oils distributor, retailer in New Mexico. How did you help this client?
Well, what I really like about this client is they were pre-existing, so they had already started the business, but they just needed more financing.
So pre-existing by the time they came to you, do you know if they were pre-existing it being legal?
No.
You don't know, or?
No, they were not. So it was still only existed once it was medicinally legal in New Mexico.
Because yesterday I was talking to somebody who's looking to start an operation, and they were discussing the complications of dark money versus light money. If you've been operating before, and then you want to go legal, they have to create a real strict barrier to make sure that unreported money. People have been doing this for 20 years, and they would use their own cash, but it's tainted. So how do you? Are there checks and balances to look for that kind of thing? How do you even know?
Laundering is a big issue with cannabis, especially because there's a lot of cash, and it's an ongoing issue.
Just go to the casino, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to get too much into detail in regards to that because it's state by state, and it also depends on each individual business. And also, it's not our problem. We help our clients with financing. I don't know where
you can't advise them
capitalization
on
came
what to
in,
do with their
and
money if it's legal or not. You just
we're not advising specifically on their cannabis business, just related to 401k plan compliance and securities.
Okay. All right. So you used their 401k funds to launch the distribution company.
Yeah,
they were already running to grow it.
They were already operating as a retailer, selling CBD oils, for medicinal purposes, and the money that we helped them put in their business allowed them to cut out the middleman and become the distributor as well. Well, one of the middlemen. They're still dealing with the growers as well and receiving those extraction oils. But they were able to distribute and package their own product, sell at their storefront, but then also distribute it throughout the state.
Okay, awesome. All right, next example number 3, retail smoke shop in Nevada and Oregon. That's 2 different states. Did I read that right?
Yeah, you did. So this isn't, it might be a little misleading. This isn't a business that operates in both states. It was a client that wanted to get involved, wanted to open up a smoke shop, but they hadn't decided on whether or not they were going to operate in Nevada and Oregon. And we helped them navigate the legal waters, I guess, in each state with the knowledge that we had, as well as by introducing them to another past client. And so they made their decision. They went to Oregon and they opened up a smoke shop there. So it's pretty simple other than that. But I thought it was interesting that
you looked at both states. Did one look easier than the other? Or what did you learn from looking at the 2 states?
Well, everything in Nevada is more difficult. So.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah,
really?
I generally don't like to incorporate in Nevada. It's just too expensive, and there's a lot of hoops to jump through on an annual basis.
It used to be everybody incorporated in Nevada, so they broke that.
Well, no, there's still a lot of the same benefits, but they don't usually apply to business owners. There's a lot of personal tax benefits from operating there, especially as a sole prop or as a service company like a sole member LLC. But for a real operational business with multiple employees, not as beneficial.
How are the laws? As far as marijuana is concerned, what's easier to operate, Oregon or Nevada?
I think Oregon's going to be easier. Definitely states that legalized earlier are easier to operate in because they already have a lot of infrastructure. Nevada is relatively new to the game.
Okay. All right. Awesome. All right. Next example: cannabis transport and distribution in Florida. What can you tell us about that?
Well, not much. This is just another example of something that the funds could be used for.
So this is a financing
instead
one.
of a retail, yes, definitely for financing. But instead of a retail location, big business in cannabis is also delivery.
Okay.
It helps a lot with people that are disabled and are able to get in the car and go to a shop. There's also people
maybe they don't want to drive around while they're smoking.
They don't want to do that. They also maybe don't want to deal face to face with a store or show up to location. So there's discretion, there's dealing with people with disabilities, and also just the convenience factor. So I just want to throw it out there. The main reason I want to put all these examples out is, if you're dealing with any business that's related to cannabis, I want you to think that, hey, it could all be done. There's nothing
these are all supply
restricted.
chain businesses. The first 4 examples were all supply chain, all people touching the weed or in some way.
Yeah.
Well, let's put this into actual numbers, just real quick. How much funds? How did he pull out for the cannabis instruction in Portland? If you could say
$450,000.
So $450,000. So that's a considerable amount. What about the distributor retailer in New Mexico?
$65,000.
65. All right. So that's a good example of the range. And what could they do with $65,000 in order to ramp up their distribution? Was it just get a couple trucks or?
Yeah, trucks and then distribution equipment, so like conveyor belts or assembly plant stuff, and then mostly packaging, paying for marketing and stuff like that. So things that they needed to develop to make their own distribution packaging.
All right. Now, how about the smoke shop? How much money did they need to start a smoke shop?
This client used just under $300,000.
Okay, was that all from the 401k, or did they bring in other funds or get any finance? You can't get a regular loan for a smoke shop, so you can forget about that.
Sure. It was all from their 401k. The main reason is just because they bought the property.
Okay, so they were purchasing real estate.
Cheap in Oregon. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then the distribution in Florida, how much?
I think it was really low. It was about $45,000.
45, and then again, we were looking at the cost of a truck.
Yeah.
Or
so real low overhead, but it was exactly what he needed.
Okay, all right. Awesome. All right, so those are 4 supply chain examples. And now we're going to get into some ones that are ancillary businesses. Let's talk about farm subleasing in Michigan. Frankly, I don't even know, is it legal in Michigan? Just medicinally?
It is now.
Or?
No, I think it's recreational.
Yeah.
But I'll have to double check. At the
I
time,
was looking before.
I know it
There's
was medicinal.
something like 30 states where it's either medicinal or recreationally legal.
Yeah.
Something like
and
that.
it's changing every year, so it's a little tough to keep up with right now. I primarily just know where my clients are, so I don't keep up too much on it right now. But at the time that this was done, it was only medicinally legal, and this client wasn't actually involved in any grow operations. He was just aware that a lot of his customers were going to be cannabis growers. So bought a large farmland and then created a subdivision.
Okay, so he bought the land. Did he use the funds that you helped him get to buy the land?
It's cash injection requirement for a loan.
So he used the capital from his 401k to put down a down payment and get a traditional loan to buy a farm. And then after he purchased the farm, he subleased, or really just leased it, right? He leased it out to marijuana businesses, and that's cool with a bank.
I mean,
They don't.
same thing
it's
with
agriculture.
Yeah.
They just know he's leasing it for agriculture purposes. They
Yeah.
probably didn't ask what kind of farming is happening there, and that's totally fine.
Well, and this is kind of the progression of cannabis right now. Is when we first started doing this, the model was pretty much just fly under the radar. You know, you stay compliant in all other areas, and nobody's going to come sniffing looking for what you're doing. It's the same as any other loan. You know, when you go to the bank and you ask for a loan, they say, "What are you going to use it for?" And you say, "Well, I'm going to use it for this, 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 and this." And then once you get the cash, you know, they don't really check on you and say, "Well, where did that money go?" No, they
Yeah,
they
what's
only
the
really
exact
care
kind of farm, right? They're
if
not going to
you
come back.
yeah, they only care if you make your payments.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, that was it. So how much money did they need in order to? How much money did they get? How big was the loan?
They rolled over 150,000, and the loan was 600,000.
Okay. All right. Can you get a lot of land in Michigan for 600,000?
I have no idea.
All right. Next, example number 6: testing lab in Phoenix. Now, when I grew up, we call that a fraternity. Right. I've seen some testing labs before. So, what's a testing lab in Phoenix? What exactly are they doing?
Well, again, with the progression of extraction and
By the way, I'm
oils-
really trying not to make stupid marijuana jokes. I know I'm really good at like dad jokes, so I'm really holding it back. I threw one in there on the fraternity thing. Sorry. Just anyway, testing lab.
I won't allow any more. No, but with the extraction and the progression that it's taking, now testing labs are really necessary because you have products that are being consumed and they need FDA information, you know, like just like your nutrition information on any other product.
FDA is federal, so not exactly federal. It's probably state, right?
So FDA regulates companies and requires them to put nutrition information on products. So that same type of information being put on a cannabis product, which is still federally legal. So again, not using that the term to say that FDA is approving specific products, but the same information that you would see an FDA-approved nutrition information on any other consumable product is the type of things that is going on cannabis products.
So the
now.
testing standards would be different in every state based on whatever rules that state came up with.
Yeah, so it's combined testing of the ingredients and the potency of whatever is being tested, and then also things that aren't related to cannabis. Again, if it's an edible, they still need to have nutrition information.
Okay, Frank's asking, some people are coming. He was talking about the last location where somebody bought the farmland and subleased it out, and he said, if they bought the property, wouldn't we have funded the building? So good question, because we can do financing for real estate, but generally we don't do a lot of land purchase stuff. So that really wouldn't be us. And we don't do a lot of ground up construction either, which, by the way, there wouldn't even be that much ground up construction. They're probably just leasing it out for farming. There's not always, maybe if they're building greenhouses.
Yeah.
Anyway, we don't do really land purchase or construction. If you come to me for like the real estate financing, we're good for pulling equity out of real estate, or we could finance a 50-60% of the purchase for something, but generally not raw land, or generally not ground up construction. Okay. All right, so the testing lab.
The main thing about Phoenix though is in states where this is legal, like Colorado, there's 20 of these testing labs. It's completely saturated. This was an attorney in Phoenix, and his son was working for a distributor at a retailer, and his son knew the market well enough and said, we realized that there's only 4 testing labs at the time in Arizona because it's only medicinally legal. So this is a great example of why these businesses are doing so well, is because they're getting in on the ground floor. So before Arizona moves to recreational use, they're setting up their testing lab and establishing their footprint and their customer base and their goodwill within the community prior to that happening. So this is a great example of that, is helping people, especially in states where there's a path to legalization. They're currently medicinally legal. Trying to work with a lot of businesses in those states because they need a lot of help with the financing. And states like California, Colorado, and Washington, it's very saturated right now, and there's less need on a business-to-business basis.
You want to get in ahead before the market comes in.
Yeah.
Here's a good example of a dad being real happy that his son was messing around with marijuana, right?
Yeah.
Just tell that to your dad if he's having a problem. Okay, example number 7. Oh, and how much money did they need to start? What's it cost to start a testing lab?
It's about $250,000.
Okay, and that's for like infrastructure, equipment?
It's mostly equipment.
Mostly equipment, okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, example 7, packaging, marketing, consulting company that does this work for marijuana-related businesses in San Diego.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
This client was in corporate America for a long time for a major marketing firm, and they relocated out to San Diego from New York, and they're just looking to start something that was very specific. They wanted to start their own consulting firm, but they really wanted to bring what they thought was good information to an industry that really wasn't doing very well. When cannabis first became medicinally legal, especially, you were looking at it coming out in prescription bottles, and the stores themselves or the dispensaries themselves were just single rooms. There wasn't a very good customer experience, and there wasn't a lot of way to tell what brand or
you couldn't distinguish your brand, right?
Couldn't distinguish any of that. So they really focused on bringing a lot of that, both to distributors as well as retail locations. I've seen a lot of their work, and I think it's fantastic. But if you've been in the industry, if you've watched it kind of grow, it's gone from something that it looked shady and it looked illegal, and now it looks like the other products that are regulated, like prescriptions, and it also looks like in some cases, it looks a lot like regular food or alcohol or something like that.
Yeah, and there's special packaging that looks nice, but is also less likely for kids to get in. So there's those type of things, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you know about it, but there's been a lot of progression in packaging as well. And I wouldn't say just child-proof. Like some things are very much adult-proof. And if you don't know exactly,
open it before you use it, basically.
Yeah. But it also
I can't help myself.
It helps to keep issues down. And there's a lot of especially with the marketing and packaging, there's a lot of work being done to make sure that the risks involved are being displayed very large in large print in very layman's terms, so that people that are new to the product, even though now it's legal, there's lots of people coming in that have never tried it before, and so when they try it for the first time, making sure that they understand what they're getting into.
Okay, all right. Now somebody asked, are you advising clients on a particular self-directed 401k custodian to use?
Well, as far as custodians are concerned, self-directed IRAs
It's a self-directed 401k though, right?
Yeah. So in this case, you could consider a business directed retirement account a self-directed 401k.
That's our product. That's what Ben offers. Business directed retirement account, that's our word for it.
Yeah. So most self-directed IRAs or solo 401ks or 401k custodians won't actually allow you to invest into your own business. So that's not something that we really consult on, because the answer is, there's only a handful of firms that will actually do it. If you go to those individual companies to set up this type of structure, yes, they will use their own custodian. So there's not a lot of recommendations I would make to a client except for, yes, I recommend me.
Perfect, yeah. Use our service. Not a lot of people, I mean, literally, Ben has the only company that'll do 401ks for marijuana-related businesses in the country, the only one. And I don't know anybody else doing this 401k financing service for marijuana-related businesses. We're probably the only people doing this, right?
Yeah. Same with real estate. A lot of the other promoters of this type of product, they have a box, and if you don't fit in that box, they just don't want to deal with you. We actually get some recommendations or referrals from those companies because clients will approach them and they'll say, no, we're not interested, go call Ben.
Perfect. All right. Awesome. Okay, so the packaging, marketing, consulting company, that doesn't sound like a company that needs a lot of money to launch because it's really consulting. It's not necessarily...
There's no overhead. This is just enough money to fund her website and pay her salary for the first couple months while she ramped it up and brought her book of business over. She only started with $30,000 initially, but she did make additional investments. We offer an offering that lasts for 12 months and allows up to 3 investments. So as business owners start to grow their operation, they can realize, I need more funding. And a lot of them don't start with all of the money from their retirement account.
Right, and it's way, way, way cheaper to use your own money to launch a business than to borrow from somebody else. Just to do simple math, if you pull money from your 401k and you pay it back at 10% interest, for example, you're paying back the interest to yourself. Mm-hmm. Or if you had a 10% interest loan, that's a cost. You're losing the money, right? Wouldn't you rather pay yourself than pay somebody else? And on the equity side, if you bring on an equity investor that's somebody else, they're taking a big chunk of your business. And if you grow and sell sometime later, that if it's 25% of your business, for example, literally 25% of the profit from the sale goes to them, or it could be going into your own retirement account. So it's worlds apart better to use your own money than to use somebody else's money. Yeah. And that's just sort of true if it's marijuana or not, any kind of business.
I just want to go back to Frank real quick. You were asking about the smoke shop. That particular business wasn't funded by a bank at all. It was 100% money from the retirement account. As far as if it's possible to do that, with another building, it's a case-by-case scenario. We would just have to know, the specifics of, where is the land or the property, what's it being used for, and what are the financials as well. So, but we certainly wouldn't rule it out.
Okay, awesome. All right, whoops, going the wrong way. Last example, pharmacy. When you wrote this down, I didn't know what the heck it was. It says pharmacy/cross prescription
I didn't
in
have
Denver.
a good
What is
number
that?
for this, but what I like about this client is because of the prevalence of cannabis in Colorado,
They just throw it at you when you're walking down the street.
It's true. You get in an Uber and they're like, hey, you want some weed? And you're like, I'm okay. But this client actually operates as a pharmacy. They don't actually serve any cannabis or anything like that, but they're offering a service to individuals that have received a prescription, especially for opioids, and they're making recommendations based on the prescription of other cannabis products that could potentially replace or just be used in addition to their prescription.
All right, let me make sure I understand that. So this is a regular pharmacy, right? Regular pharmacy, when somebody comes in with a prescription for a marijuana product, they tell them which one to use, but they don't sell it? Is that what I heard?
That's correct. So
that's
they're
weird.
operating
Where's
as
the
a
business model on
pharmacy.
that?
Well, because they are still operating as
Sounds like a
pharmacy.
nonprofit.
Yeah. But they charge separately for
so they charge to tell you
what you could use
what
to
kind
replace.
of, okay.
Because there's a lot of liability in that. If you've been given a prescription and somebody's telling you not to take that prescription, there's liability there. So this is why it needed to be a pharmacist. It needed to be somebody that had pharmacy technicians that understood that and had the legitimacy of being able to make recommendations. Not in a similar way to here's a generic version of what you were prescribed, but also specifically you could take this instead of that.
Okay. Are they recommending a regular drug in lieu of the marijuana or just the type of marijuana-related product? Like, use this edible that's high in whatever, it's better than smoking it. I mean, is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So it's not just, hey, take cannabis instead of whatever you were prescribed. It's, well, if the situation occurs or if it's a good situation where you could replace what you've been prescribed with
like,
cannabis.
hey, you have high blood pressure, start smoking weed every day, you'll be a lot calmer.
Yeah.
Is that
so instead they'd be saying, here's a specific strain or here's a specific type of edible you could take that wouldn't cause issues with your current medical problems. And I think that's really important to take into consideration because there are a lot of, I keep saying users, but I'm really thinking of as patients that have been prescribed something and they really want to use cannabis instead. And you hear stories, especially if you watch the news and a lot of the programs about how this is expanding, they interview people that have gone out and done it themselves. So, and they get the guy on the phone. He's like, I was in a lot of pain. I just went and tried every kind of marijuana until I found the one that works for me. I'm like, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Yeah, that's one way to do it.
And I mean, unless
long,
you
strange
enjoy
trip.
It,
Yeah.
so I think the idea of having somebody that can make a recommendation and say, listen, you should probably start here if you're going to try to self-medicate.
Okay, all right. Well, that's interesting. All right, so that's all of our examples. If you had any questions, I hope you already asked them. That is it for today. Thank you, Ben, for coming on and enlightening us about the different ways to use a 401k to finance a business. How much did you get to? So this is like a regular pharmacy. Were they opening a new pharmacy? And how much money did they need for that?
This was
they were adding cross-prescription.
Correct.
And what do they need
Correct.
money for to add cross-prescription?
Mostly just marketing. So
Okay, so they
again,
started marketing
another
it.
client we didn't put a ton of financing into. It was about $75,000.
Okay.
Did you still want to talk about financing and tax savings?
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about. So we talked about financing almost
okay.
the whole time, right?
Sure.
Because we gave 8 examples. But let's talk about the tax savings side. This is basically there's no difference between using a 401k in a regular business or using a 401k in a marijuana-related business. Is that a true statement? Let's start with that. If you have our one provider that'll do it, does it work exactly the same as if you had an auto body shop or a law firm?
No,
different.
logistically, it's completely different.
Oh, okay.
So in the future, when it's federally legal, there probably won't be a difference between the two types of plans.
Okay.
But right now, there has to be a very big difference because of the flow of money. You can't just take cash that, again, because 401k plans are federally regulated, you can't take the cash that you made with your cannabis business and deposit in a 401k plan. So there's a lot of steps and legal red tape that we need to go through to make sure that that can happen legally.
You
With a
create
lot of these
multiple
businesses,
different companies with some sort of,
No.
I don't need the detail, but just in general, like what's the...
Well, the main way is through membership in a trust, but
Okay.
I'm not going to get any more
Yeah.
detail than that. The main reason why we have that as a product is because, again, with a lot of these businesses, even though they are significant, or they got a lot of assets or financing that was significant for them as a business, when you look at the size of these businesses, these were all relatively very small.
Mm-hmm.
And so this works at that level. But when you start to have 500 or 1,000 employees, you can't really fly under the radar. You need to be able to come to the Department of Labor and the IRS and say, I am compliant. Here's my paper trail.
Right, yeah, you can't mess
Here's
around.
exactly what.
Yeah.
So that's why we developed this product that is specifically for medium to large cannabis businesses, and that they're really not interested in financing. It's just for the tax savings.
What's when you say medium? Give us the
50
lowest
employees or
side
more.
of medium. Once you have 50 employees or more
because
in your
they're
marijuana
medium
business, then you should get a 401k. I mean, you really should anyway. If you have that many employees, there's a lot of benefits to doing it. What are some of the main benefits of having a 401k if you have 50 or more employees?
Employee retention is the biggest one. Tax savings is the biggest one.
Right.
Employee retention should be one of the biggest ones, but most employers don't care that much about that. So the tax savings is the primary reason why anyone would set up a 401k plan. Tax savings for the business, tax savings for the owners, and also for the employees. Everybody gets to take wages that are being paid to them and just dump them into a 401k plan, not pay any tax until they retire.
Yeah, just to do simple math, you're making, let's say, $100,000 in a year, and you're able to put 10 of it into the 401k plan. It's going in pre-tax, which means you're only taxed on 90K of your income for now, and you'll get taxed on the rest when you pull it out. But the good news is you could have it invested for 20 years, and now that 10K is worth 50, and you get taxed later after you're retired when you're not making money, so you're in a lower tax bracket. If you're the business owner, there's some really cool things you could do where you put a bunch of extra money in for yourself by having matching and stuff with your employees. We're not doing a show on 401k, so we won't get into we could be talking, Ben could talk for hours about that. I've heard him talk for hours about it. No joke. But there's a lot of benefits. Anything else that people need to know about the difference with this versus?
Yeah, I mean, being able to offer a benefit that isn't just for financing actually goes a long way when marketing to cannabis companies, because of the differences that I talked about in supply chain versus ancillary businesses. When you approach somebody, you don't necessarily know what their needs are. And if you're saying, hey, I can get you financing, they might say, well, I don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
So it has really created a lot of traction when I can go to a cannabis company and say, whatever it is that you need, I can supply that, whether it's tax savings or financing. Even outside of just 401k plan, the ability to get my foot in the door with some of these companies because I'm talking about something that they're interested in. Whereas if you're just a one-trick pony getting finance, you don't necessarily always, you don't have the ability to reach out to everybody, and they may not respond that well. So what I've seen is it's kind of a catch-all that sometimes I'll be advertising or reaching out and prospecting to a company for tax savings, and then I find out they need financing. And then also for businesses that we're talking about financing, realize, well, they have a tax savings need as well.
Cool. Now, if you're watching this, somebody asked, how do you get a hold of Ben? The easiest way to do is go to financeagents.com, enter yourself as a lead, even if you've done it in the past. And when somebody calls you, say, hey, I'm interested in the 401k financing for a marijuana business, or tell you what it is. And if it's relevant, then we're able to get you guys together. Oftentimes, there's more ways to skin a cat, which, by the way, is one of the grossest things ever. I don't know who actually skins cats. But there's a lot of different ways to finance your business, and we might be able to piece a lot of the different ones together where the 401k comes in for one spot, maybe there's working capital, a lot of other stuff. So that's the easiest way to do it. Just go to the website, in your info, and somebody will call you. All right, that's it. Ben, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for watching. Subscribe. If you like Ben's shirt, like the show. If you don't like Ben's shirt, click like on the show. Whatever you do, let me know that you heard me. Thanks. I look forward to doing a lot more deals together. See you next week.